Hey there, cowpokes. How y'all doing? Hey! Thank you so much for having me. I can't believe I'm back in Ocean City. I used to be here all the time. It's been about 10 years, right, Noel? There's an old family friend over there. Don't mind me. I'm talking. It's been 10 years since I've been to Ocean City, and it's great to be back, and it's great. I've never been to one of these before, and you guys, this is awesome. It's great to be back at these things now that COVID's over, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Finally. Well, it's not over yet, but you know what I mean. Well, the last 2 years were crazy, weren't they? It's a good time to just stay at home and get out the PlayStation and Xbox, right? Anyways, thank you so much for having me. I hope you're all having a great weekend. Outlaws for life! And I know you're all going to want to hear it, so here you go. Lenny!
Well done. Well, it sounds just like the arcade game, right? All right, before we get to the question about the game, Roger, I just want to talk to you just about, how you even got into the business. Like, most people don't know Roger's a Jersey kid, right?
I was born in Claremont Hospital up in North Jersey in Belleville, and started out life in around Bloomfield, Nutley area, which isn't as nice around here, but it's still Jersey, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but as a child, you moved to Ireland, correct?
That's right, yeah. My mother was from there, so we went over to the west coast of Ireland, to County Sligo. Middle of nowhere, very rural, very beautiful, very green. I don't know if you know W.B. Yeats, the poet. That's Sligo's claim to fame. He's the famous dude from Sligo, yeah.
Yeah. So, but then how did you get into acting? Did you do it as a child, or what made you attracted to, obviously you're a famous voice actor now, but I assume you did other acting that got you interested in doing this line of work, right?
Yeah, I started out in school, like so many other people, just doing plays and whatnot, musicals with the parish, what have you, and at school. And then when we moved to Ireland, I started doing amateur dramatics. It's something that I always loved, but I wasn't sure whether or not I could make a living out of it, because it's not a lot of job security when you're trying to be an actor. So when I went to college, I actually started out doing an associate's degree in computing. The problem was that I was terrible. So I finally just, we only live once, right? So sometimes you just got to bite the bullet and follow your dreams. So that's when I went to drama school. And when I graduated, started getting work, but it's not easy, I had to do a lot of survival jobs and what have you. But I started out in theater and voiceover over in the UK. And because I was born here and because I grew up in Ireland, I was able to do a lot of accents, and that's what got me into voiceover. And my first voiceover job was for a slot machine called Reservoir Frogs, which was a takeoff of the Quentin Tarantino movie.
Yeah.
And I was just me for a couple of hours just talking into a microphone, and they wanted a Michael Madsen sound-alike, so I was going cherries, bananas, lemons, and on the cover there was this frog holding a human ear. But long story short, one thing led to another, and I started doing voiceover for video games. And this is almost 20 years ago. But then I started working on, as gaming got more and more advanced, and as we've seen the graphics get more and more detailed, one thing I started noticing is that voice actors started working less and less in the booth, and then more and more in the performance capture studio. Now, a lot of people think Red Dead was voice acting, and some of it was, but most of it was performance capture, which is like Andy Serkis, with Lord of the Rings and Planet of the Apes. So you're wearing spandex, not very cowboy-y at all. You got spandex on with these balls, and then a rig suspended from the ceiling in a place a little bit bigger than this. And those sensors track the balls and the movement, and then an algorithm translates that into what you see in the video game, or more often these days on film. We see Mark Ruffalo do it, and he's the Hulk for the Marvel movies, and video gaming now is, the great majority of it is done via performance capture. So, yeah, it was a lot of suspension of disbelief, because we'd walk into a set, and it would, geometrically and dimensionally, it'd be exactly like it would be in the game, but it would just be pipes and scaffolding. We wouldn't know what it actually looked like until the animators would bring us over to their computer, and they'd go, "That's you." And you'd look at yourself, and you'd move your arm, and then you see Arthur moving his arm on the screen. And so it was a really, really exciting new way to work. And the way that they're developing the graphics and everything, the way it's advancing, we're literally seeing this new technology unfold in front of our very eyes. It's really, really exciting time. And it was a privilege to work on it. Yeah. Really, really cool medium.
Right. So I guess when you first said you're going to do that, the performance capture, did you visualize it that way? Or, I mean, because you're doing the voiceovers and you understand, you're doing a mic with the script, kind of interacting, but that first time must have been like, wow.
The first time I did it was on another game, and yeah, I had known the way Andy Serkis did it on Lord of the Rings, but the first time I did it was maybe 05, 06.
Okay.
And it was mind-boggling. It was really mind-boggling. Because back then the technology wasn't as advanced, but yeah, you have all these balls, and back then we had balls all over our face too. And that was a real problem, because whenever you start sweating, they'd start falling off, and then you'd have to cut and do it over again. Nowadays, most studios have a helmet, and then you have a little camera, an HD camera pointed at your face with an LED light. And then that captures all the facial data that they need now, and it's as good as any HD camera, if not better. But yeah, it's literally like, I often think about the way Chaplin and Buster Keaton were working on film, and then when they brought sound into it. I feel like motion capture has done that a lot too for the video game industry, because it's completely changed the way we perform in gaming now. There's still voice acting, but so much more of it now is performance capture as well.
Yeah.
And I just love it. I'm very passionate about it, because there's, we would be in the same set. For 5 years I worked on Red Dead 2. 5 years we worked in the same set. And in the morning, it would be a desert. And in the afternoon, it would be like Saint Denis. Some of you know the game, I'm sure. Yeah. It would be like a 19th century American city. And the limits were our imagination. And that's literally, that was our limits. And it was amazing. And the people at Rockstar Games are so talented and intelligent too. It was a real joy to work with them. 5 years, we were like family.
Yeah. So to our left here, or our left, we have Kevin. He's my gaming expert. Kevin, do you have any questions you want to throw out, Roger, before we go to the audience?
Yeah. For anybody who's not familiar with Red Dead, can you kind of set the stage of the game and maybe talk a little bit about your character, Arthur Morgan?
Sure. So Red Dead Redemption 2 is the video game that I was in. I was lucky enough to win a few awards from the Game Awards from it. It was a very successful game that came out in 2018. It's the second game of a series called Red Dead Redemption, which first came out in 2010. Anyway, it's a Western. It's a Western story-based video game that you can get on your PlayStation or your Xbox or your PC these days now. And it starts in 1899, and it's the journey of the Vanderlyn gang as outlaws are being chased out, and the Pinkertons are finally wiping out all of this crazy crime that's going on in the West. And it's a marathon. It's like a novel. The game itself, my first playthrough, I'm on my second playthrough now, and it's been almost over 3 years. My first playthrough, I think, took about 65 hours to get through it, because I did a few of the side missions too. But it's what we call in the gaming world an open world game, which means that the story isn't linear. You can unfold the story in whichever way you see fit. And if you get bored, you can go off and go fishing for 3 hours, So an open world, open sandbox game gives the player a lot of freedom to just immerse themselves in a world and do what they like. It's the same thing with the Grand Theft Auto franchise too, which is also made by Rockstar Games. So for all of you gamers out here, thank you so much for coming. And I guess there's also the online component of Red Dead 2, where you can nowadays meet up with your friends who might be in France or China even, and as long as you get the timetables right, you guys can meet up and go have a drink at the local bar and throw some dynamite around Valentine and start griefing loads of other people. I can't play online because all the 10-year-olds are too good. They've got plenty of time to play, and they get up to level 200 and whatnot. I don't stand a chance.
The first time I tried playing online, I was just expecting to ride my horse around and just say hi to people. And two complete strangers rode up to me, and I kind of like waved. And they tried to hog tie me and put me on the back of their horse.
I wouldn't doubt it. Did they get to?
No, I killed them.
All right, very good. We did a charity stream once, and we were going around raising some money, and some guys started throwing dynamite at us. But then the whole server found out that we were getting griefed. And then they came to our rescue, and it was about 30 people, all level 200 and whatnot, and they eventually forced them out of the chat. There's a funny story, though, that Ned Luke is the guy who, you're all familiar with the Grand Theft Auto games too, right? Well, I met and worked with Ned Luke a bit, because we got the same boss, and he was telling me a funny story when he was playing on GTA Online, and now some of you may know you've got the option to have your microphone so that you can talk to fellow players. Anyway, he's talking to people on GTA Online, and they're going, dude, why are you trying to sound like Michael? You don't sound the least bit like him. And he's like, well, actually, funnily enough, my name's Ned Luke, and I'm the guy who plays Michael. And they're like, yeah, right. And they started killing him over and over again. I mean, he didn't have a chance. So eventually he had to go on Twitter and say, look, this is my handle on PlayStation. Please stop killing me when I log on to GTA Online. And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I thought you were joking. But yeah, you kids are too good. I don't have the hours to put in to be as good as you guys. No. I stick to story mode. I think I'm a bit biased.
So I think I saw written Red Dead has announced that they sold about 43 million copies. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, last I checked, it was in the high 30s, but that makes sense, yeah.
So I think one of the reasons it's so popular is that a lot of people weren't prepared to make such an emotional bond with the main character, Arthur. How did you put your own kind of stamp on him and make him yours?
Well, when I first started working on it, I was nervous because I was a huge fan of the first Red Dead Redemption, and I was a huge fan of John Marston. And I knew that I remember, spoilers, but at the end of the first Red Dead Redemption, when you take over as Jack, we all loved John Marston. We'd all spent the last 30 hours with him. Playing as Jack was, there's nothing wrong with the character, but you can't help but miss John. And I knew that was probably going to be the case for Red Dead 2. So early on, I said to myself, look, you can't out John Marston. You've got to do your own thing here. But luckily, the script and the writing was so good that I was able to really flesh out my own character. And when you spend so long on one character, like the 5 years that we did doing the performance capture for that game, you can't help but gain an affinity for that character and find some nice textured details and whatnot. But it was a labor of love, and the people at Rockstar Games are so amazing, and they gave me the opportunity of a lifetime. It really was. And I pinch myself every day, and especially now that I get to talk to such amazing fans like yourselves as well. It's a really cool thing. It's a really cool thing. Outlaws for life.
Can you talk a little bit about Arthur's struggle and his evolution over the course of the game?
So here's the thing. You were saying how we identify with Arthur. And that's, I think, one of the biggest differences between gaming and film or books and what have you. Because in gaming, you're not the audience. You're not sitting back and just watching a story unfold. You're an active participant. So in many ways, we can't help but identify with Arthur because we are Arthur. We're responsible for his actions. I think that's what draws us to being so invested in him. And the fact that no two people have the same playthrough, have the same story when they play Red Dead Redemption 2 makes it a very unique and special experience for everyone. Well, not everyone, but most people who enjoy it anyway. So, yeah, that was a bit of a challenge. And one of the ways it was also a challenge is that you have to kind of anticipate. So you can either play Arthur as a really nasty, nasty guy if you want, or you can follow the path of redemption, which is in the title, and you can make him become a good guy. And spoilers aside, when Arthur comes face to face with his own mortality, it makes him reassess his life, and it changes his perception on a lot of things. And he starts to regret some of the evil that he's done as an outlaw in the Wild West, some of the things that he's had to do to protect his gang, who he's very loyal to and who he considers family. But once he gets TB and he knows that his days are numbered, that seriously changes the way he looks at a lot of things. And he tries to I think he tries to atone for a lot of his misdeeds, which is the way it's intended in the script anyway. And you can do that as an evil guy, or you can do it as a good guy. And I think when I come to conventions like these, and so many wonderful people are kind enough to tell me how much Red Dead means to them, it just blows my head away. And especially during the last 2 years when we were in quarantine, a lot of people got back into Red Dead. We were all stuck at home. I know I was doing it. And, it's just, to be able to be part of something that's appreciated by so many is the dream of any actor. And this is beyond my wildest dreams. It really is. But, there's no two ways to do Arthur's story. Everyone has a different story. Everyone does a different side mission. It's such a huge, massive world. It still blows my mind, the amount of detail that's put into it and the amount of attention that Rockstar Games put into it.
Any plans for 3? Have they talked to you?
Well, now I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you. So obviously we don't want to spoil anything. We don't want you guys to get privy to any new things coming out and about, because you don't want to have the ending ruined. But there's these things called NDAs. Very, very popular in the video game industry and in the movie industry too. So a non-disclosure agreement. I don't know, to answer your question. And if I did know, I would tell you that I don't know. But I think it's only a matter of time. I don't think that we've seen the last of the Red Dead franchise at all by any means. Whether or not Arthur's a part of that, I don't know. But I certainly love working for Rockstar Games, and if they were to call me on the phone, I would definitely pick up. But between you and me, I think they're a little busy working on another game called Grand Theft Auto right now.
I've heard of that one.
Yeah, some people might have heard of that. Yeah.
All right, we're ready to open up to any questions from the audience. You can, if you want to come up to the mic right here, and that way Roger can hear you and answer the best he can. With the NDA in the way, we're doing our best.
Yes, Ed O'Donnell. I run a charity. We help the homeless and low-income inner-city kids. So can you use your notoriety with video games, comics, art, music, to put a few more messages in there about helping the homeless, low-income people? In other words, we can produce a product that's fun, but also lights the social conscience.
There's so many things there's so many social commentaries that Rockstar Games tries to make in their games. Yeah, I've done what I can to raise money for St. Jude's on my social media and whatnot, with the help of you guys. You guys have been awesome in the past donating. Gaming is now the biggest entertainment medium in the world right now. It makes more money than film, and I think when you're such a massive part of the entertainment industry, that I think that's really important, raising awareness to some of the people who are less fortunate than us. And I think Rockstar do touch on that in the Wild West. There certainly are a few homeless people in the video game, for example, whereas if you donate the money, it increases your honor. But I think it's very important. I think it's extremely important to raise awareness about the people who are less fortunate than us. And thank you so much for what you do. That's awesome. And I think it's something that we could definitely see more of in the video game industry. And I've done what I can to help promote that too. And I'd love to get your details too, sir. We can maybe have a tweet about it today, and maybe when some more people come tomorrow, because we're here all weekend, aren't we?
All weekend, yes,
yeah.
We are.
Well, I think that's wonderful, and we'll do what we can to help your cause, sir. Thank you.
All right, anybody else from the audience want a question? Come on up. This is your chance.
Hey, Roger.
Hi.
I wanted to ask you, what was that one moment when you realized this was going to be a big game, and how it made you feel? Like, what was that defining moment when you realized Red Dead 2 and Arthur Morgan were going to be such an iconic part of gaming? Because
Man, honestly, all I was aiming for was for people not to hate me for not being John Marston. I knew how much John Marston was loved. So I was just aiming, as long as we can do as good as the first Red Dead Redemption, then I'll be happy. Because it was a responsibility I took seriously. I remember the first day working with Rob Wiedoff, who plays John Marston, and I was a huge fan of the previous game, even before I knew I was part of the second one. And I met Rob, and he's the nicest guy. He's so down to earth. But the script that we were working on that day is when I rescue him from the wolves, which is very early on in the game. And I had to basically say some pretty nasty stuff to him. I have to chide him and tease him, because Arthur's the big brother in the relationship. And I was saying to myself, I can't say this to John Marston. I mean, it's John Marston. But, you do your job and you work with the script that you're given. And Rob was so comfortable about it that, we hit the ground running. But yeah, I was nervous, I won't lie. And the first moment, because my first 2 auditions, I didn't know it was for Red Dead Redemption 2. This is how strict and secret they are. All I knew was that it was for a Western video game, and that they asked me to wear cowboy boots when I showed up because they wanted to see my gait with the cowboy boots, which is 90% of what you see. But once I got in, I think it was maybe the 3rd or 4th audition, and I realized, oh, can you come down to Rockstar Games? And I went, oh, Rockstar Games. Is this the next Red Dead? And they're like, no. And obviously I knew that there was a very beloved franchise, and that's when I started to get a little bit nervous, because people would go, who's Arthur Morgan? We don't want Arthur Morgan, we want to play as John. But thankfully, once the game came out, you guys responded pretty well to Arthur, and I was relieved at that. Early on, like I said, I realized I had to do my own thing, because trying to recreate what John Marston did is an exercise in futility. You can't outdo. I had to do my own thing, and you guys have been so responsive and gracious about it. It's been a blessing. But yeah, I was very nervous, to answer your question. And the hardest thing too is, like, when you're working on it in complete secrecy, it's not like a TV show where you're getting reception, and once they see the pilot, you're getting audience feedback. We had no feedback whatsoever until everything was done, and it was too late to go back and change it anyway. So it involved a lot of trust. We had to trust that Rockstar Games knew what they were doing, because by the time you guys started playing it, it was too late to change it. But thankfully, you guys liked it.
just going to say, I liked you more than John. I loved your character.
You're all right, boy.
All right, anybody else from the audience want to couple questions? Come on, let's do it.
Hi. My friends and I all love Story. We all play online together, and it's really ignited our love of all things outlaw and cowboy, and now we watch Western movies like every week. I know you've narrated some Western books. I was just wondering if you're a fan of like Western movies and if you have any favorite cowboy movies.
Favorite cowboy movies? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do narrate a lot of audiobooks. It's something that I hold very close to my heart. My dad showed me. My dad actually got me introduced to audiobooks because he used to do newspaper for the blind and for the Star Ledger, which is further up north, but it's still a Jersey paper. And when I was 5, 6 years old, I would help him cut out newspaper articles, and then we would put it on cassette. And we could record 6 cassettes at a time back in the 80s, yeah. And those would be mailed out to people who were blind or visually impaired. And I do narrate a few Western books now, but you know, like I said, I started out in theater, and I've worked in film, theater, TV. I love being in front of the camera. It's been so long since I've been in front of the camera now because most of my work is voice-oriented now. But when you're an actor, I think theater is the way to go at it. Is the way to learn because your audience is right there. And you learn what works and what doesn't work in real time. The audience either laughs or they don't. And that's the best teacher for an actor right there. Because if you're on if you're working in front of a camera, you don't know if the joke's going to land or not until sometimes 2 years after you've done the scene. And by that point, the editor has had their little pick at it, and the director has had their pick at it, and you had no control where the cinematographer puts their camera. But when you're on stage, you have no filter between you and your audience. And that's real. And I think that's the best training grounds for an actor. But film, I mean, there are all so many different ways to skin a cat, and I love them all. And yeah, I love film work, and I would definitely get involved in more. Well, we'll see. You know, whenever I just audition for what they send me, you know?
All right, anybody else? Sure, come on up to the mic, guys.
Oh, yeah, this is a great cosplay. There's some awesome cosplays here today, isn't there?
Yeah.
So, do you think there should be an Undead Nightmare 2?
Oh, I would love one. I really would. I'd love one. But you know, these days, the DLC is changed. I mean, we've seen the DLC change a lot. It's becoming more and more of an online thing now. It used to be where you would spend not as much on a full-blown video game, but you'd spend maybe 15 or 20 bucks for an extra add-on package to a video game. I think nowadays with microtransactions and all of the ways that they can make money and create revenue online, I think DLCs are becoming more of an online thing. But don't quote me, I don't speak for Rockstar Games. No, I never did. They know what they're doing. They're a billion-dollar industry. And I know that they released a really cool set of missions on GTA Online with Franklin. I don't know if we'll see a second Undead Nightmare, but I would love it because I loved the first Undead Nightmare. That was brilliant.
Yeah, that was great.
All right, another question down here. Come on up.
How's it going?
Good. My friend's a big fan of you, and he always wanted to know. I think you've once said that Arthur originally had a kid in the game, and I just want to know, like, what was your opinion on like that content being cut, and like what would we have seen if that was like brought to fruition?
So it wasn't cut. So a lot of things were cut. I think when we started working, it was 5 years, like I said. I think the writers had a very skeletal idea of what the structure of the story was going to be, but I don't think they committed themselves to fleshing it out, you know, because they wanted to see which actors brought what to the table, and they wanted to see how I responded to some lines as opposed to others. So I think some of it they made up as they went along. But initially, yeah, Arthur did have a newborn baby that didn't quite make it out of Coulter, which is the first chapter when they're set up in all those cold mountains. But anyway, as the story evolved, that kind of got pushed to the side. But then he references his son later on in the game, if some of you might know, as he's riding around with Rains Falls. He mentions a son that he had called Isaac. So they did keep the dead child, but they slightly tweaked it.
I just thought it was a very interesting thing, and I would have wanted to see more of it fleshed out.
Yeah.
Character.
Well, you know, we had so many writers, but there were 3 main ones, and one of the main writers was Dan Hauser, who is one of the founders of the company. So it was always funny because our director, when the boss is one of the writers, you don't complain about the script.
Yeah.
So many times me and the director would be working on a scene, and Rod would just go, "Oh, this really doesn't work. I mean, who wrote this?" And someone will go, "Oh, it was Dan." "Oh, okay, never mind." And then other times it would be like, "Oh, Mike wrote this one. All right, well, we're changing it." But one of the things I really appreciated about working with Rockstar Games is that, you know, if they found something that really works, they would change it to suit that. And if they found something that wasn't working too good, they would cut it, shed off the dead weight. This is the way you got to do it when you're creating stories. You know, you got to be, as an editor, you got to be willing to kill your babies, is the saying, you know. And some stuff gets cut, and they decided to incorporate Arthur's dead child in a different way in the story, I guess. So it's actually the way that it happened in the end, I think, is really effective, because you're about 3/4 into the game, and he hasn't mentioned one width or breadth of it. And then when he finally talks about it to Rains Falls, I think it really grabs the player's attention. You're like, my gosh, Arthur's never spoken about this to anyone before. And I think it further plays how he's such a stoic guy who keeps his cards close to his chest. And like so many cowboys, he doesn't want to show any vulnerability. He doesn't want to talk about his feelings. And the fact that at some points in that game, we see this tough cowboy exterior crumble, and he does talk about his feelings, and he does talk about how he's scared of dying. That was something that blew my mind, because I don't remember ever seeing that in a Western before. Clint Eastwood touches into it a little bit on Unforgiven, I think. It was like actually taking someone's life is a bigger deal than a lot of Westerns play it across. But in Red Dead Redemption 2, you see your protagonist actually talk about their feelings and talk about their fears. And I thought that was really cool.
Thank you.
Okay. Great. Good question. Anybody else? Question? Come on up.
Come on over, partner. Wow, you're dressed for summer, partner. I like it. It is, thank God, it's a little warmer, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's getting there. I'm a big fan of Red Dead Redemption 2. It's actually, I played that first before I even played Red Dead Redemption. I had to go get that and see how it ended.
Oh, so you played it the right way around.
Yeah.
Cool.
I just want to thank you so much for all you do. It's literally my favorite video game of all time. But I always had one question I wondered about. When you were voicing Arthur, or you were playing the game yourself, did you have a favorite mission that you did?
Oh, wow. There's quite a few missions that I really, really enjoy. I like the one where you go up on Braithwaite Manor to try and rescue Jack. That's a pretty iconic one. With that walk up to, that's taken straight out of Django Unchained, I think. That's what I love about Rockstar Games, is that they're such film buffs and nerds. You play Red Dead Redemption 2 and you see all these little bits taken out of famous Westerns. There's a bit from The Searchers with John Ford at the beginning, and there's a bit from The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. There's loads of little snippets that they've taken from famous Westerns and they've put into the video game as an homage, and I just love that stuff. But thank you very much. Another one I really liked is going after Bronte, raiding the mansion. And of course, Arthur isn't involved, but the very last mission in the entire game, American Venom, that's an awesome one as well. When you're John and you finally get revenge for Arthur, that's pretty cool. And of course, everyone loves the Lenny mission. I had no idea that was going to be as popular as it was. I remember doing that, and with the wonderful actor who plays Lenny, Aaron Atkins, and they had us running around the volume. Okay, go over to that corner now and just start slapping each other on the face as hard as you can, faking it, obviously. And then, okay, now I want you to pretend that you're in the mud and you're wrestling. And it wasn't in the mud, it was just a very big mat. And of course, we're not dressed up as cowboys, but we're in spandex with balls. And we had cowboy boots, and we had gun belts. But apart from that, everything just looked ridiculous. And that's why we really had to use our imagination. And then we were doing the can-can. That mission was crazy. And the way it caught on, it was not expected. But yeah, I'm glad that you all love it.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Sure, come on. You're next.
So this is more of a general question about your acting and your voice acting. Are there any particular actors that you look up to as role models or inspiration for your work?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When I was working on Arthur, me and my dad, we watched Westerns a lot. My dad introduced me to Westerns. He was more of a John Ford, Howard Hawks guy, and then I kind of liked the spaghetti Westerns, too. I liked Clint Eastwood. He was more John Wayne. But John Wayne was a huge influence on my work for Arthur. Clint Eastwood, not so much, because Clint Eastwood barely talks in a lot of his stuff. He's almost too stoic. But John Wayne was a big influence. Another huge influence was a Japanese actor by the name of Toshiro Mifune, who he was in a lot of Kurosawa movies. He was in the original Yojimbo and Sanjuro, which were the Japanese films that Fistful of Dollars and For a Few Dollars More was based on. Instead of it being set in the Wild West, it was set in feudal Japan with wandering samurai. But apart from that, it's the exact same story. And Toshiro Mifune was an amazing actor because he could be funny one minute and he could be terrifying the next. He was a huge inspiration for my work on Arthur. And then going back to Rob Wiedoff, who plays John Marston, he was also another huge influence because I played the first Red Dead Redemption religiously as I was working on Red Dead 2 to try and get a feel for the game, and get a feel for the world. And just enjoying Rob's work was another huge, huge factor for me. But outside of Arthur, I mean, yeah, there's loads and loads of inspiration. Daniel Day-Lewis, I mean, there's so many amazing actors out there. But at the end of the day, we're not saving children, we're not helping the homeless, we're just telling stories. And there's sometimes I find it so crazy. I pinch myself to be able to come to things like this and talk to you guys. And when you guys say how much you enjoy the work, it just means the world to me. But there's so many real heroes out there that we've seen in the last couple of years, like all our healthcare workers, etc. And I just take my hat off to them too. I talk about actors who are huge influences, but at the end of the day, we've got lots of real life heroes walking the sidewalk and the boardwalk every day, and we're rubbing shoulders with them. And sometimes they inspire me too.
All right, wait, questions? Yeah, come on up, sir. Okay.
So in your position as a voice actor for the player character in a video game, you have a different relationship with the audience than the lead character of a film or the lead actor of a stage play, in that you're not just embodying Arthur Morgan, you're embodying the character that we as the players interact with the world through. And obviously Rockstar has gone into, they've gone through the trouble of reconciling that within the gameplay, of having things change depending on the honor system and things like that. But the way that I play Red Dead Redemption 2 is I run around aimlessly, I steal horses from people, and I name them after the people I stole them from. I jump headfirst into active geysers, and I litter the road with dead-skinned animals and just sort of watch people walk past them. Yeah. So how do you reconcile the character that Arthur Morgan is to you and the character that he is within the story and the sort of different unhinged ways people can use him to interact with the Wild West?
Question. That's an awesome question, and something that I really thought about. Because you're right. You can play Arthur as a total psychopath and then start a story-based mission, and then the first line of him will be like, I don't like to hurt people. Well, you just murdered 200 people in Valentine. What are you talking about? The term is ludonarrative dissonance. This is an actual term that game creators have to consider. So when you're doing a story-based, story-driven video game, you have to consider, the player has the freedom to play this character as morally or as immorally as they wish. And it's a huge challenge to try and get that character to fit the narrative of the writers. And that was a challenge in Red Dead 2 as well. Like Arthur, at the beginning, he's an outlaw, and he does a lot of nasty stuff. But then things happen throughout the game that we would like to think helps him to change the perception of that and to change his outlook on life. And they reward good behavior and they punish bad behavior. But you still have the freedom to play the game whatever way you want. Now this is a real challenge when you're coming, especially towards the latter half of the story, because sometimes, depending on how the player behaves, it does affect the narrative. So you will have certain scenes happen if he plays it an honorable way, and if he plays it a dishonorable way, we did different scenes. And that was one of the ways that we combated that. So depending on how you play the character, it will affect the story. But sometimes it doesn't. For the lesser, things that aren't as, for more side story stuff, maybe things that aren't as impactful for the main through line of the narrative. And in those cases, as a performer, you've got to come up with a way to deliver the dialogue that fits for a psychopath or a nice guy, because you don't know which way the player is going to play him. So it's a big challenge. And that was one of the biggest challenges working on the game, actually, was to come up with a way that's truthful and honest and still makes sense. It still is believable, at least, for the audience, that a murderer might say it this way, but also a guy who's coming to terms with his mortality and is scared to die, he might say it that way as well. So it was a big challenge, and I'm glad you asked that question, because, yeah, it's a significant thing. Ludonarrative dissonance. It's a real thing. There have been meetings around tables for hours and hours and hours about it on Red Dead 2, I can guarantee you.
Yeah. All right, come on up. Can we let this guy ask a question?
What do you want to know, Carl?
Well, I was fortunate enough to see you live on stage up in the bright lights at New York City. Fantastic performance, portrait
Thank
of Dorian
you.
Gray. My question is, will the good folks of the East Coast ever have an opportunity to see you live on stage again?
Oh, gosh, I hope so. Yeah, there was some things in the burner, but then COVID happened, and thank gosh we're starting to see theater come back now. So yeah, watch this space. I do make my announcements on social media. If you guys are on Twitter or Instagram, I'm rclark98 or Rolling Raj. I do make announcements. I might be doing something with the Theater of New Jersey up in Madison, New Jersey, which is north of here, I know, but yeah, I can't wait. I love working from home. I love being able to do voiceover work from home and audiobooks and whatnot, but I really love getting up on stage and in front of the camera too, and I can't wait to get back on stage.
Very good.
Yeah, and yeah, thank you so much, Carl. That was really kind. Yeah.
A quick comment, too. You have to be really careful with these games, because I went into my favorite local coffee shop, and they know a muffin I like, and they had none, and he said, "Oh, we don't have any of your muffins, but they're coming up. They're coming up soon." I said, "As long as I get my muffin or you get shot, I'm happy."
When people start quoting your lines back at you, man, it's the weirdest thing. Thank you, Carl. Cheers.
All right, we have time for maybe one or two more questions. Anybody? Okay, come on up.
Well, hey there.
Do you recommend fishing with dynamite or normal fishing rod?
Well, if you fish with dynamite, I don't think it. I tried fishing some of the legendary fish with dynamite, and I don't think it counts. You gotta catch them with a rod and reel, don't you? I'm pretty sure you gotta do it with the rod and reel in order for you to get to unlock the achievement. I think, right?
But do they kind of float up once?
Oh yeah, they'll float up all right. Oh yeah, dynamite will work.
I didn't know that.
I think it does.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, so I remember catching the legendary elk, and for some reason, as the elk was in its final death throes, it's a video game. I'm not talking about real life. In his final death throes, he actually waded halfway out into a lake, and I couldn't bring him back. So I lost my legendary elk. I was gutted. But I don't think dynamite will kill the fish, but I'm not sure that the achievement will register. I think you got to do it with a rod and reel.
Okay.
I think, yeah.
I think
Very
we
good.
had one over here.
One more. All right, come on over.
I like your jacket.
I'm a big fan of yours.
Sorry?
I'm a big fan of yours. I'm a big fan.
Oh, thank you.
You're
Thank you so
welcome.
much.
How long did it take to record the extra dialogue in the camp conversations?
How long did it take for all the extra dialogue in the camp conversations? Okay, so that was kind of 50-50. Half of that would be in the booth, and then half of that we did in the motion capture stage. When we did it on the motion capture stage, it took a lot longer, because you'd film it like you would a scene in a TV or a movie. So we'd be sat around with a few logs, which were really just some apple boxes. And then we had a fire in the middle, which was just something, just go, that's the fire. And so we'd be warming ourselves, pretending that it was giving out warmth and whatnot. That usually took a lot longer. But stuff in the booth, you're usually just by yourself. And that you can chug out a lot of stuff more quickly in the booth. But to answer your question, typically we would work 3 weeks doing performance capture, and then we would have 2 weeks off. And in the 2 weeks off, we would go into the sound booth for a couple of days. And then we would do the voice acting, of which the voice acting maybe took up maybe 10% of all my work. But it took 5 years. My first day on Red Dead 2 was August of 2013, and my last day was August of 2018. And in those 5 years, it was a full-time job, 12 to 14-hour days. And it was for an actor to get a 5-year contract is so unusual. I was so grateful. I don't know exactly all the camp conversations, but some of them, I remember the insults were a lot of fun. They were all done in the booth. But some of the camp conversations, like for example, when you're sat around the campfire, and a lot of people would start talking about their own pasts and lives, that was done in the performance capture booth. So that was done like a normal scene. So the actors would have to learn and memorize their script, and we would rehearse it until the director was happy with it. So that took a lot longer. But off and on, it took 5 years. We would keep going, returning to it, then we'd work on something else. I remember we would start a scene and we wouldn't finish it until 3 years later. And the person who was in the person would come back after 3 years and they're like, "You're still working on this?" We're like, yeah. And this is the same scene that we started 3 years ago? I'm like, yeah, I'm glad you're still here. People, babies had been born, some people had passed away, some people had moved, and some people had to be recast. But it was a huge gargantuan effort, and it took a village, literally thousands and thousands of Rockstar employees working on this, all hands on deck for years. It took a long time.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have time for one last question from the audience. Anybody else want a question? Okay, come on up.
How's it going?
Hi, Roger. Big fan.
Thanks.
I literally haven't stopped playing the game since it came out.
Ah,
every day.
You're all right.
I'm curious with the stage acting that you guys were doing. Did Rockstar allow you guys any room for improv or your own character building? How did that work?
A little bit, a little bit. Like I said earlier, one of the writers is the owner, so you didn't argue at the script that much. But we always knew that if we wanted to stray away from it, they would always listen to what we had to say. I know in Grand Theft Auto, the guy who plays Franklin Solo, he's actually from South Central LA. He grew up as Franklin. And a lot of the times he would get a script and he'd be like, "No one from Watts, no one from Compton would say this." And I know he did a lot of improv, but a little bit. To answer your question, there was a little bit of improv, but mostly we stuck to the script. Right. Yeah. Okay. Of which apparently is like close to 100,000 pages, someone told me once. Yeah.
Wow.
And when you print it out and stack it all up, it's as tall as me.
Wow. All right, we'll throw it back to Kevin. Kevin, any questions that we missed we need answered? What do you think?
Anything coming up that you can tell us about? Anything you want to plug?
Yeah, well, there's so many games. As you know, NDAs, you can't talk about it. There's 2 games I can talk about that I've got coming out soon. One of them is from a Welsh independent studio. I think it's going to come out on the PlayStation and the Xbox and what have you. It's called, oh my gosh, what is it called? I play an Irish rabbit, so it's very different from Red Dead 2, I'll tell you. And it's based on the Welsh language and Welsh mythology, and it's a lot of fun. It's a 2D dimensional game. That should be a lot of fun. It's called Lunaphon. Lunaphon, that's the name of it. And there's another game that I've been working on, and it's been so fun because I'm back doing motion capture again, and you get this. The technology has advanced even more now since the last time I was working on Red Dead 2, and just seeing the way they change things is really cool. And some of you might know Troy Baker, another famous voice actor who works in gaming all the time. Me and Troy are working on a game together. It's been a joy working with him. We're doing I don't want to give too much away, but it's a sci-fi thriller. It's going to be out, who knows? These things take so long. Honestly, it might be another 2 years. But it's set in Mars, and it's oh my gosh. It was a lot of fun. We've done a lot of it, and we're still working on it, and I can't wait to show it to you guys. Hope you like it.
Okay, great. Anything else, Kevin?
Good.
No. All right. Anything else, Roger? You want to share with the audience?
I'm going over to my table shortly afterwards.
Yeah.
I hope you guys carry on enjoying this fantastic weekend. I know I am. Please stop by and say hello. If you're too shy, if there's something that you didn't want to ask on the front of the microphone, come on over and I'll be happy to answer it over there.
Like Roger said, he'll be over there from 1 to 3 if anybody wants to pay for autograph or pictures, and he'll be free for conversation as well. So thank you, everybody, for attending the panel.
Cheers, guys. I'll catch you later, then. Lenny!
Thank you for watching this video. I am Invader Zim, and I traffic in doom. And so, if you do not subscribe to this channel, you will have doom that befalls you by me, Invader Zim.